Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, Turkey, which has the largest army in the Middle East, lets the world know who it will stand with in the war between Israel and Iran. In an ominous sign of things to perhaps come, the president's so-called doomsday plan landed at Andrews Air Force Base on Tuesday night. Germany's chancellor announces he's grateful to Israel for doing what he called the dirty work on taking on Iran's mullah regime. Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz, they go to war, exemplifying the split in the MAGA movement over Israel and how much support the U.S. military should give to the Jewish state. And the U.S. Supreme Court delivers a 6-3 decision that upholds Tennessee's ban on so-called gender-affirming care for minors. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. Leading off tonight, the Israel-Iran war continues to escalate, with Israel hammering Iran's communications and military targets, and Iran continuing to launch missiles at Israeli cities. Iran sent a ballistic missile barrage that scored 2 hits on Thursday, one on the Soraka hospital in the southern Israel city of Beersheba, and another in central Israel. Casualties were reportedly heavy. Here's a look at the hospital after the missile strike.
What is this? Ой, boy.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to avenge the attack, stating in a post to X, quote, "We will exact the full price from the tyrants in Tehran." With the war continuing to heat up, all eyes are on outside nation states that might join in the conflict. The United States is poised to enter the war at any moment on behalf of Israel, as is the United Kingdom, both of which have moved Air Force and naval assets into the region. Another wild card is Turkey, a key member of the U.S.-led NATO alliance, controlling key waterways in the Middle East. On Wednesday, Turkish President Erdogan made it clear whose side he is on in this latest Israel-Iran war. And of course, it's not the side of Israel. Erdogan announced on Wednesday that his country's defense industry would become fully independent, producing its own warplanes, tanks, drones, and frigates, all in an effort to build up a deterrent to Israel. According to the outlet Middle East Eye, Erdogan said at a parliamentary group meeting of his AKP party, quote, "We will further increase our domestic and national production rate, which we have raised from 20% to 80%. We will continue with patience, determination, perseverance, and firm steps until we achieve our goal of full independence in the defense industry," end quote. Turkey already has a very active defense industry and boasts the largest army in the region. So Erdogan seems to be sending a message to Israel. Addressing Israeli attacks on Iran and rising tensions in the region, Erdogan said Turkish officials were on high alert and preparing contingency plans for all possible risks. He said, quote, "We will raise our deterrence to such a level that not only will no one attack us, but no one will even dare to think about it, end quote. He added that Turkey had recently completed a number of national defense projects, including air defense systems, warships, cruise missiles, armed drones, and helicopters. Erdogan described Israel's assault on Iran as, quote, state terrorism, end quote. And he accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government of disregarding both laws and rules. He defended Iran's response to Israel's attack, which was launched 7 days ago. Quote, it is completely natural, legitimate, and a legal right for Iran to defend itself in the face of Israel's banditry, end quote. And then he added that the attacks were carried out while Iran's nuclear negotiations were still ongoing. After a cabinet meeting on Monday, Erdogan also announced that Ankara was accelerating its production plans to bring medium and long-range missile stockpiles to a deterrent level. We have reports that a U.S. Air Force E-4B Night Watch aircraft, commonly known as the Doomsday Plane, landed at Joint Base Andrews late Tuesday night. That followed a highly irregular flight path from Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana. Watch this. Well, that flight sparked speculation, given the plane's historical role during major national or global crises. The I-24 News reports, quote, formerly designated as the National Airborne Operations Center, the E-4B is built to serve as a mobile command post for the president and top military officials in the event of nuclear war or other catastrophic events. It is designed to withstand electromagnetic pulses and even nuclear blast, and has only been used in exceptional circumstances, most notably on September 11th, 2001. The article goes on to say that while the exact reason for the deployment remains unconfirmed, its landing outside of Washington, D.C. comes amid high-stake developments in the Middle East, and Israel is reportedly intensifying military operations against Iran, which is fueling fears of a broader regional conflict. I-24 notes that although the aircraft does occasionally conduct training flights or readiness drills, the flight's erratic path and timing coincides with the latest escalation between Israel and Iran. And that, of course, has raised eyebrows among military observers and aviation trackers. By taking action against Iran, Israel is doing the dirty work for everyone else. That's according to the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who praised the Jewish state's crucial strikes on the Islamic Republic. He said that these strikes serve the interest of Germany and other Western allies. During an interview at the G7 summit on Tuesday with German broadcaster ZDF, Merz stated that Israel was carrying out the dirty work for all of us by striking Iran. He then emphasized that, quote, we are also victims of this regime. This mullah regime has brought death and destruction to the world, end quote. And then he added, quote, I can only say I have the greatest respect for the fact that the Israeli army and the Israeli government had the courage to do this. Without their action, we might have seen this regime's terror continue for months and years, then possibly with a nuclear weapon in hand, end quote. Merz suggested that Israel's strikes had a significant impact on Iran's leadership. That's when he added, quote, I assume that the attacks of the last few days have already weakened the mullah regime considerably, and that it is unlikely to return to its former strength, making the future of the country uncertain, end quote. We'll be right back after this break. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us and for remembering that we are brought to you by you. We are a listener-supported broadcast. We're a listener-supported network. And one of the greatest and biggest ways that you can help us continue to push out Christian worldview programming is with a contribution to our foundation. Our foundation exists to help us educate people on the truth of the Christian worldview, applying it to all areas of life: law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, national security issues, of course, Bible prophecy. And if you appreciate that, we push out all this programming for free. And not just the programming, the iPhone app, the Android app, the Roku channels, and all these distribution platforms that we've spent a lot of money building. If you appreciate the free content and the free platforms, we need your support. Please, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You will find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. So thank you for that. worldviewfoundation.com. Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz, they're going to war. Cruz made the mistake of sitting for an interview with Carlson when he was clearly unprepared for some of the questions. Here's Cruz trying to argue that AIPAC is not a foreign lobby and does not work on behalf of the Israeli government. Watch this.
So I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel...
From AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay.
It's
when was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do a deep dive on AIPAC,
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets...
No, I'm not going to do a simple...
I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government. And it's not.
No.
It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay, but it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And if
it's not true.
No.
How much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have with the government of Israel?
No idea. I imagine some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC because AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if...
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah, and why
aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
The Epoch Times reports that Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel announced on June 18th that they had finalized their nearly $15 billion acquisition deal. As a result, shares of the U.S. steel giant stopped trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Notice confirmed that the New York Stock Exchange informed the Securities and Exchange Commission that the U.S. steelmaker's shares would be delisted following the completion of Nippon Steel acquisition. The stock, which debuted on the New York Stock Exchange in 1901, ceased trading at 8:25 a.m. on June 18th. In a joint statement, the companies announced that Nippon Steel closed its $14.9 billion acquisition of the struggling U.S. steelmaker. Following through on its initial bid in 2023, Nippon acquired 100% of U.S. Steel's shares at $55 per share. Nippon and U.S. Steel leaders thanked President Donald Trump for his participation in the deal. U.S. Steel CEO David Barrett said in a statement, quote, "Thanks to President Trump's bold leadership, American workers secured the best possible deal. U.S. Steel will remain rooted in the United States and continue to call Pittsburgh home. Through our partnership with Nippon Steel, we're poised to grow better and bigger with transformative investment, cutting-edge technology, and the creation of good-paying jobs across the United States," end quote. Nippon's crude steel output, their capacity, is projected to increase to 86 million tons annually, inching closer to the company's 100 million ton goal. That's according to the news release. The deal has been a political hot potato for about 2 years. President Trump initially opposed the Japanese company's bid during the 2024 election campaign. After a January 31st, 2024 meeting with the president of the Teamsters Labor Union in the nation's capital, President Trump said as follows, quote, "We saved the steel industry. Now U.S. Steel is being bought by Japan. So terrible," end quote. But the president changed his position upon returning to the White House. In April, President Trump authorized a 45-day review of the agreement, reversing his predecessor's decision to block Nippon's purchase over national security concerns. According to a CNN report, concern is rising in the Gulf Arab states about the possibility of environmental contamination or reprisal attacks if Israel or the United States strikes Iran's nuclear facilities just across the Persian Gulf. In Oman, users on messaging apps circulated advice on what to do in the event of a nuclear incident. Residents are instructed to, quote, "enter a closed and secure indoor space, preferably windowless, seal all windows and doors tightly, turn off air conditioning and ventilation systems," end quote. That's if the worst were to happen. In Bahrain, 33 shelters are being prepared for emergencies. And sirens, they were tested nationwide. That's what the state news agency said on Tuesday. Concern about nuclear fallout, well, it has risen over the past weeks, with news outlets across the Middle East publishing guides on how to deal with radiation leaks. Ilham Fakhro, a Bahrainian resident and fellow at the Middle East Initiative at Harvard Kennedy School, said people are, quote, "definitely concerned," end quote, about the prospect of Israeli and U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran's only functional nuclear power plant in Bushehr, well, it is closer to several U.S. allied Arab capitals than it is to Tehran. He stated, quote, "Primarily, there is a fear of environmental contamination, especially in shared waters," end quote. She added that other concerns include, quote, "the possibility of an Iranian reprisal on U.S. military facilities in the Gulf states, which could impact civilians and extended airspace closures," end quote. Despite its improved relationship with Arab neighbors, Iran has implicitly warned that it would target nearby U.S. interests if it were struck by the American military. Bahrain, for example, well, they host the U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, which could be a target. The U.S. Gulf Cooperation Council, that's an economic and political bloc that comprises of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Well, on Monday, they activated their Kuwait-based emergency management center to ensure that all necessary preventative measures are taken at environmental and radiological levels. That's what they said. The UAE's foreign minister warned, quote, against the risks of reckless and miscalculated actions that could extend beyond the borders, end quote, of Iran and Israel. The Qatari foreign ministry, their spokesperson, also warned of uncalculated strikes that could affect the waters of Gulf countries. Breitbart News reports that Florida's Republican Attorney General James Uttermeyer has issued subpoenas to companies selling Chinese medical devices that can transmit patient information to a Chinese Communist Party-controlled institution. This is without the patient's consent. State investigators, they're looking into potential cybersecurity risks and alleged violations of Florida's Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act, with patient monitors manufactured by Contech, which was founded in South Carolina in 1988 before moving to China in 2006. U.S. resellers such as the Miami-based Epsomed, they sell the monitors under its brand name. On January 30th, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration released a safety memo regarding cybersecurity vulnerabilities in Contech CMS8000. That's a patient monitor, and the Epsomed MN120 patient monitors, warning that they, quote, may put patients at risk after being connected to the internet, end quote. While the agency said it has not been made aware of any cybersecurity incidences related to the devices at that time, officials, well, they found that the monitors, quote, may be remotely controlled by an unauthorized user, end quote, capable of sending personal health data outside of the intended network. Now, according to the Attorney General's office, the so-called backdoor that's built into the monitors, well, it, quote, could allow bad actors to manipulate data shown on the devices without the patient or provider's knowledge, end quote, with programming that can automatically transmit patient information to an IP address owned by a university in China. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. In a resounding victory for parental rights and child protection, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a 6-3 decision on Wednesday. Their decision, it upholds Tennessee's ban on a so-called gender-affirming care program for minors. As reported by PJ Media, this landmark ruling represents a triumph of common sense over radical gender ideology, well, that has been targeting America's children for far too long. As you could have guessed, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, they dissented, while the conservative majority in the court recognized what Tennessee, my home state, and 24 other states have already figured out. Children deserve protection from irreversible medical experiments that are masquerading as healthcare. In fact, PJ Media notes that the ACLU and its allies, well, they tried to dress up this radical agenda and, of course, constitutional language. They claim that banning these dangerous treatments for gender dysphoria while allowing the same medications for legitimate medical conditions somehow violated equal protection. Oh, that's a joke. There's no such thing equal about subjecting confused children to experimental treatments, well, that could sterilize them and cause them lifelong health problems. Not to mention subjecting a minor to this who later says, hey, I wasn't mature enough, emotionally stable enough to make this decision or have it made even for me at my request. Now I regret it. Well, thankfully, A majority of the court disagreed with the ACLU. Writing for the majority was Chief Justice John Roberts. And he said that such policy decisions, well, they're best left up to voters and their elected officials, not the courts. In her dissent, Sotomayor accused the court of retreating, quote, from meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most, end quote, and, quote, abandoning transgender children and their families to political whims, end quote. Political whims, huh? That's a very interesting word, political. Because isn't that exactly what the organizations that are pushing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors have been captured by? The political, cultural Marxism of leftist organizations, all in the name of protecting children. You see, the medical establishment is happy to go along with this cultural Marxism. You know why? Money. Money. It's big money. Isn't that, by the way, what some representative of a hospital over in Nashville said a couple years ago on a video that went viral? How much money there is in these transgender surgeries for minors. Aren't most hospitals today owned by gigantic corporate organizations that can be easily enticed into endorsing this sketchy medical worldview and procedures with huge upside, by the way, to their bottom lines? So the term buyer beware, well, apparently that never applies more than it does today in our medical health arena, in the medical industrial complex arena, that is, right? Buyer beware. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast. You can do so by going to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Remember, we're brought to you by you. We're a listener-supported program. Our foundation exists to help us push out free Christian worldview programming to help you understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. We got to bring in around $40,000 a month to keep this network going. That does not include my salary. That's just our operating costs. We spend thousands of dollars on bandwidth. I paid a bill for about $6,000 that was related to bandwidth just this week. $6,000. That doesn't count another bill that gets added to it that I think pushes us over $8,000 a month in storage of those digital files and streaming of digital files so people can watch free television, free programs like this. Well, that's where our foundation comes along. Because without sponsorship like our foundation, we got to put it all behind a paywall and say, well, if you want to watch it, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay for it. Just like you do your cable bill. You don't get your cable for free. You got to pay for it, right? Or your satellite, you pay for that. We're pushing it all out for free as a broadcast service, education, and ministry. And our foundation comes along to help us do that so that we can have a mission, a ministry in part of helping people to think through the lens of a Christian worldview. So if you appreciate that, we appreciate your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.